If someone had told me a year earlier that the same children who used to beg for Gary would one day sit beside presidents and CEOs, I wouldn't have believed it. But life can surprise us. Hope, Miracle, and David, the same children Madame Veronica treated like rags, were now stars. Not social media stars, not celebrities, but stars of something bigger. Grace. Their life now? Hope became the face of a new girl child education project in Africa. She stood in meetings with governors and said, "If I can go from a mat in the backyard to a mansion with a library, then every girl in Africa can rise too." Miracle was awarded a National Writing Prize. Her second story, The Woman Who Let Go, was secretly written about Madame Veronica. But she never mentioned her name. Instead, she said, "Some people hurt us, but they also shape us." David? David got invited to a robotics competition in Dubai. At just 8 years old, he created a small talking robot that said, "You are loved. Never give up." People cried just hearing the robot speak. Mr. Obinna stood proudly in the background. He didn't like cameras, but he loved watching his children shine. And back in the old neighborhood, everything had changed. Parents began treating their children better. People became more careful how they treated strangers. They remembered what happened with Madame Veronica, and they feared becoming like her. Madame Veronica herself rarely came outside anymore. Her clothes became old, her compound overgrown. Even the dog she used to beat now barked at her. She tried to sell her house once, but no one wanted it. "Isn't that the house where she sold the triplets?" they whispered. She had riches once, not in money, but in opportunity, and she threw it away. One day, a black Jeep returned. It parked in front of her gate. People gathered, thinking maybe it was the police, or maybe a debt collector. But no, it was Hope. Now 12 years old, tall and graceful, she stepped down from the Jeep with 2 security guards. She walked to Madame Veronica's door and knocked. Madame Veronica opened the door and froze. "Hope," she whispered, "my daughter." But Hope didn't cry. She simply said, "I forgive you." Then she handed her a wrapped package and walked away. Inside the package was a soft blanket, a Bible, and a note that read, "I was once cold and you gave me nothing. Now that you're cold, I'll give you warmth. But only God can give you peace." From rags to riches, from pain to power. They had nothing, but in the end, they had everything. After Hope's visit, Madame Veronica locked herself inside for days. She didn't come out. She didn't sweep her compound. She didn't shout at anyone. But we noticed something strange. Every morning, a different delivery man would drop off food, soap, medicine, or fresh clothes at her gate. And every item came with the same name on the label. From HMD Foundation. That's right, the same children she once called a burden were now feeding her. Then one day, she left the house. She looked different. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen, and her hands trembled. She went from house to house with something in her hand. A newspaper. "I want to know if this is real," she kept saying. "Please, help me read it." She came to me too. I looked at the paper and gasped. It was a full-page article in the National Herald. The headline read, "Meet the triplets who changed a billionaire's life and the woman who gave them away." Underneath was a photo of the children and Mr. Obinna standing in front of a new orphanage named Veronica's House of Healing. Yes, Veronica. He named it after her, not out of honor, but as a reminder. The article said, "Sometimes it takes heartbreak to awaken purpose. If Madame Veronica had not rejected these children, they may never have found their destiny." She broke down, right there on the road. She knelt in the dust. She clutched the newspaper and screamed, "Why? Why did I do this?" People came out. Some watched silently. Others walked away. And me? I stood there with tears in my eyes. Because the truth had finally landed in her heart. She didn't just throw away children. She threw away her name, her legacy, her future. Meanwhile, at HMD Foundation, Hope was preparing to travel to the US for a scholarship program. Miracle was launching her first children's book in 3 languages. David had just been awarded Young Innovator of the Year. And Mr. Obinna? He was smiling quietly, watching the children he once rescued become the light the world never saw coming. Sometimes, life brings us face to face with our worst mistakes. And when it does, the shame can be too heavy to carry. But for Madame Veronica, the shame wasn't just in what she did. It was in what could have been. Madame Veronica no longer walked with pride. She used to be the loudest in the compound. Now, she walked slowly, with her eyes to the ground. She didn't wear makeup anymore. No more expensive wigs, just a plain scarf and an old wrapper. The weight of regret was eating her alive. I saw her one evening, sitting on a wooden bench outside her house, holding a framed photo of the triplets from when they were little, before she threw them out. She rocked back and forth, whispering to herself, I didn't know who they would become. But the truth is, she did know they were children. She knew they needed love. She knew they were hurting. She knew they had no one else. But she looked at their pain and chose selfishness. And now, all she had left was a broken heart and an old photo. The final blow came unexpectedly. One Saturday morning, the community chairman came to our street with big news. HMD Foundation is building a school here, he announced. A free school for the poor, sponsored by the triplets and Mr. Obina. The street exploded with joy. Everyone clapped, danced, and cheered. But one person stood quietly at her gate, watching with empty eyes. Madame Veronica. She had no tears left, just silence. Her house was right next to the land where the school would be built. Every morning, she would wake up to see children learning, laughing, and growing because of the same triplets she once called a burden. That was her punishment, to live long enough to watch the greatness she rejected. Bless the world. One last thing happened. On the day of the school's grand opening, a huge crowd gathered. TV stations came, politicians, celebrities. Then Hope, now 13, took the stage. She stood tall in a beautiful white gown. She looked at the crowd and said, "This is not just a school, it's a message. That no child is worthless. That even when life starts in pain, it can end in purpose." The crowd clapped loudly, but she wasn't finished. "To the woman who gave us away, we still love you. But your regret came too late." And then she stepped down. Madame Veronica watched from a distance. She didn't clap, she didn't cry. She just stood there, frozen, like someone who realized too late that she didn't just sell 3 children. She sold a future, a miracle, a second chance. And now, it was gone. Sometimes the greatest blessings come dressed in rags, and the people we reject today might be the ones we'll need tomorrow. Madame Veronica thought she was getting rid of a burden, but she gave away the very key to her own redemption. Let this story remind us, never look down on anyone, never judge by appearance, because hidden in the most unexpected places are God's greatest gifts. If this story touched you, please give it a thumbs up. Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more emotional, life-changing stories. Until next time, stay kind, stay humble, and always choose love.